Seattle had never shown mercy to those who had fallen, especially not in winter. The drizzle cut through skin like tiny shards of glass. The wind howled through every crack in the patchwork of cardboard and tarp under the bridge. Troy lay curled beneath a heap of worn-out blankets, his back pressed to a cracked concrete pillar. In his hand was an empty bottle. His eyes, hollow and glazed, stared up at the stained ceiling above. It was his birthday today. 47. No cake. No one remembered. No one left to remember. The cold drained the color from his skin, but it wasn't the chill that hurt the most. It was the emptiness. No job. No family. The last time he spoke to his son was 7 years ago when the boy screamed, "You're a lousy father," and slammed the door shut behind him. Troy had once been a skilled mechanic, working in a small garage near Tacoma, hands steady, always cracking jokes. Easy to talk to. But when his wife died of cancer, he slowly slipped into drinking first to numb the pain. Then, because there was nothing left, to lose. Bar fights. Angry outbursts. Then unemployment. Then debt. People walked away from him like leaves falling in autumn. From a respected father, he became the dangerous drunk guy no one wanted around. He tried to sober up once or twice, got a job for a few days. But every time, something in him gave up, because deep down, Troy believed, "I'm broken, am trash." That night, the rain turned heavy. He wheezed as if something in his lungs was collapsing. His head buzzed. The cold wasn't just on his skin anymore. It was inside his bones. He wondered why he hadn't died yet. Others had. Dave overdosed. Benny found frozen behind a grocery store. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a torn slip of paper. His divorce decree. Something ripped out of an old life. He didn't know why he still carried it. Maybe to remind himself of who he used to be. Maybe to remind himself that he had nothing left. "If I don't wake up tomorrow, so be it," he mumbled, voice breaking like his breath. Then footsteps. Not a cop. Not a junkie scrounging for scraps. Light. Small. Like a child. Troy squinted through his fevered haze. A girl, maybe 9 years old, stood in front of him, hair in 2 pigtails, a flimsy paper bag in one hand, a broken umbrella in the other. "Are you cold, mister?" Her voice is small, but clear. Troy tried to ask, "Who are you?" But his throat was dry. Only a grunt came out. The girl set the paper bag down. Inside was a container of warm chicken porridge, a napkin, and a small piece of folded notebook paper. "I drew this for you," she said. "You look like a sleepy superhero from one of my comics." Troy's hands shook as he unfolded it. It was a clumsy drawing of a man standing in the rain, shielding a kitten from getting wet. Then, just like that, the girl vanished into the storm. Troy sat there, stunned. The porridge warmed his hands. The drawing warmed something else. For the first time in years. He didn't drink to fall asleep. He looked up at the ceiling again, still cracked, still cold, but somehow shimmering, lighter. He hadn't been saved, but someone, somewhere reminded him he wasn't completely forgotten. And sometimes, light begins with something that small. Troy woke the next morning, lungs heavy, bones still aching, but something inside him had shifted. It wasn't hope, not quite, but it was no longer nothing. He sat up, slowly gathering his awareness. The empty bottle lay on its side. A corner of the cardboard beneath him was soaked and torn. In the far corner, under a tarp, sat a tattered brown fabric bag, his treasure chest, if there was such a thing. He reached for it with trembling hands. Inside, wrapped in a plastic sheet, was a wooden box oak, dulled by time, scorched at one corner from a fire he once caused while drunk. He had kept it since he still had a house. This box was the last home he had. Troy opened it, fingers shaking as if touching his own ghost. First, a photo. His wife. Laura. Gentle eyes, soft smile, arms around their son, Toby, 8 years old, wearing a Superman shirt. He remembered the day it was taken Toby's birthday. They had scraped together enough for a small backyard party. He grilled burgers. Laura baked a cake. Toby ran in circles, laughing till he fell over. That boy would be a young man by now. But Troy had no idea where he was, or who he'd become. And Laura was gone. Taken 10 years ago by breast cancer. A brutal thief. She had been the center of his world. And when she left, he let everything else fall with her. Beneath the photo lay a ring. Not his. Hers. He had slipped it from her cold finger the day of her funeral, placed it in this box, and never touched it again. He had sworn on that ring that he'd raise Toby right, that he'd keep their family whole. And yet, he was the one who shattered it. At the bottom of the box was a crumpled note, the writing uneven and shaky. Dad, why don't you come home for dinner anymore? I waited. Where are you, Toby? Age 10. Troy swallowed hard. The note had been tucked into a lunchbox Laura packed one day, the same day Troy missed dinner, to stay at the bar. He had read it drunk, crushed it in anger, uncrumpled it again, over and over. It stabbed him every time he saw it. "I'm a piece of shit," he'd told another drunk once. "No one forgives a man like me." But looking at that child's handwriting now, he knew one thing for certain. He had never stopped missing his son, never wanted him to hate him forever. Among the old contents of the box was a different kind of paper, one Troy didn't remember putting there. A folded school notebook sheet, probably slipped in recently. Another childish drawing. A man standing at the edge of a deep pit, in the distance light, and next to it, written in blue pen, small and wobbly. "You're a good man. You just forgot." He read the words again, and again. A girl. Was it the same girl from last night? Maybe. Maybe not. But those words, they cut through the armor he'd built around himself. A good man. Him he'd fought in bars, been arrested, made his own son cry until he was feverish. Could he be a good man? Roy remembered the last time he saw his son. It was after smashing a bottle against the wall. Screaming in rage, "I don't need anyone, don't you dare call me your father." Toby stood frozen at the door pale, terrified, then bolted. After that, everything collapsed. But today, with that wooden box in his lap, Troy saw it all differently. He hadn't just lost his son, or his wife, or his home. He had abandoned himself, not fate, not bad luck, a choice. He had chosen to give up, and if giving up was a choice, then maybe, just maybe, coming back could be one too. Not easy, not overnight, but possible. Troy carefully packed the wooden box again. He didn't know why, but that day, he didn't smash a bottle. He didn't beg for beer. He didn't lie down waiting for nothing. Instead, he stood up, his first step in 3 days. Wobbly, shaky, but forward. Small goal. Find the nearest church, ask for help. Bigger goal. Do one thing, just one that might make his son a little less ashamed if they ever crossed paths again. That morning, Troy walked, arms tightly gripping the wooden box. The January wind sliced through his tattered coat. The sun barely peeked through the skeletons of leafless trees. Each step was slow, deliberate, but for the first time in years, it had a direction. He remembered a small church on Willow Street. He had gone there once with Laura on Christmas Eve, over 10 years ago. But he remembered the priest, Father Matthews, old, kind eyes, the kind of man who shook your hand like you mattered. If he's still there, Troy whispered to himself, maybe I've got one shot. The church looked the same. Peeling paint, worn wood doors. But something warm spilled from inside. He pushed open the door. Incense drifted through the air, soft and sweet. At the front pew sat Father Matthews, older now, his hair gone silver, but his eyes still bright. He looked up, paused, then smiled. Troy Turner. Still stubborn as ever. "I see." Troy's voice cracked. "I don't know what I'm doing here. Maybe I came to admit I've lost." The priest didn't press. He just patted the bench beside him. "Sometimes," he said gently, "sitting down is the bravest thing a man can do." They sat together for nearly an hour. Troy talked. He didn't hold back. He told him about the drinking, the fights, the self-hatred, the shame, the memory of his son. Father Matthews didn't interrupt, didn't judge. He just listened. When Troy finished, the priest stood up, went to the back kitchen, and returned with 2 loaves of bread. "Today is Thursday," he said. "Every Thursday, we hand out bread to the homeless. But I think the first loaf should go to you." Troy held the still warm loaf with shaking hands. "Thank you, I don't know what to say. Say whatever you want. But maybe next Thursday instead of receiving. You could help pass them out. Think you can do that?" Troy didn't answer right away. He stared at the bread, then at his hands. Finally, he nodded just slightly, as if afraid he might take it back if he thought too hard. "I'll try. I don't have anything left but a bad name." Father Matthews smiled. "A name is just a symbol. A man is what he does after he realizes he was wrong. And I think," he said, "you're just beginning to do something right." The next week, Troy showed up early. The man who once slept on concrete now wore an apron, standing behind a folding table, handing out loaves of bread and steaming bowls of soup. People eyed him cautiously. Some avoided eye contact, but a few looked surprised, then nodded slightly. Once, he was one of them. Now, he was handing them a meal while wiping the tables. He heard a voice behind him. "2 portions, please. One for me and one for my little brother." He turned. It was her. The little girl. The one who left the porridge, the drawing, the words. "You're a good man. You just forgot." She was older than he remembered, maybe not 9, maybe 10 or 11 now. A little boy stood beside her, barely 7, clutching her hand. Troy stared, speechless. She paused, smiled bright as summer light. "I knew you'd be here. You left that note," he stammered. "Yes, because I know. You just forgot. Good people forget sometimes." That night, after everyone left, Troy stayed behind to clean the church, not because anyone asked, but because for the first time in years, his chest didn't feel hollow. He didn't have a house. His son hadn't come back. But he had something he thought he'd lost forever. A second chance from that day on. Troy came every week, then more often, then every day. He helped clean the kitchen, wipe windows, sweep the front walk. Father Matthews arranged a spot for him at a local shelter, a place for recovering addicts and ex-convicts looking to restart. It wasn't much, but it was the first roof over his head in 5 years, before leaving the church that night. Troy paused at the door. In one hand, he carried the wooden box. In the other, something new, a flicker of light in his chest. Not redemption, not yet, but real. And in the hush of that quiet hallway, he whispered, "Toby, if you're still out there, Dad's coming home, 1 week after starting work at the church." Father Matthews brought Troy to a place called Hope Haven, a modest shelter built for those climbing back from addiction, homelessness, and prison. It sat tucked away on the edge of town, in a cluster of worn-down buildings. No luxury, just bunk beds, shared bathrooms, and simple meals. But here, everyone was trying. "We don't expect perfection," said Linda, the shelter manager. "Just take responsibility for your next 24 hours. That's all." Troy just nodded. He wasn't ready to hope for much, but he would try. This time, really try. His roommate was a large Lakota man named Red Bear, tattoos up both arms, hard eyes, deep scars. He'd been in and out of prison at least 3 times. Red Bear didn't talk much. He looked at Troy like he'd seen 100 just like him, guys who gave up halfway through. The first night. As Troy opened his wooden box, Red Bear glanced over. "You had a kid?" he asked suddenly. "Yeah. I drank too much. Hit him once. He ran. I haven't seen him since." Red Bear was silent. Then he pulled a crumpled photo from under his mattress, a little native girl with long braids and sad eyes. "I had a daughter. She used to look at me like I was Superman. Now she probably doesn't even remember my face. 2 broken fathers. 2 empty beds. But for the first time in a long time, they weren't alone. Troy meant it this time. He showed up to chores, washed dishes, followed the rules. But habits cling like smoke. One evening, exhausted after a long shift, he passed a liquor store on the way back from the bus stop. His throat burned, his hand trembled, and a voice whispered inside, "Just one. One sip. No one will know." He stepped inside, opened the fridge, grabbed a can. As he walked to the counter, a voice behind him jolted him. "Troy." It was Linda. She didn't yell. She didn't scold. She just looked disappointed. "We don't punish mistakes," she said. "But remember, the first time, it's a mistake. The second time, it's a decision." Troy stood frozen, face flushed. He placed the can on the counter and walked out. Back at the shelter, his chest ached. Not from craving, but because for the first time in years, he didn't want to lose someone's trust. A week later, while wiping down the church tables, Father Matthews handed Troy a small piece of paper with a phone number scribbled on it. A woman called. He said, "She said her nephew once received bread here. She thinks she might have seen you." Troy stared at the number, fingers trembling. He didn't dare believe, but he called anyway. A young woman answered. Her voice had a trace of familiarity, like a ghost in daylight. "Hello, I am Troy. Father Matthews gave me this number." Silence. Then, "This is Melissa. Laura's sister. You're Toby's." Father Troy nearly dropped the phone. "Is he okay? Has he ever asked about me?" Pause. "He doesn't talk much. But last week, he said there was an old man who gave him warm bread at church, and he thought it looked like you." Troy gripped the phone tighter. His throat burned. "I don't expect anything. I just needed to know he's alive." Melissa hesitated. "If you've really changed, maybe you'll bring him to see you." Once, that night, Troy couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, clutching the same old box. Inside were Toby's baby pictures, Laura's notes, and an old handkerchief Toby had once used to wipe blood from his dad's forehead after a drunken fall. He held the fabric close. He understood now redemption didn't start with others. It began the moment you stopped betraying yourself. Sunday afternoon, Troy stood outside the church, hands shaking. A silver pickup truck pulled up. Melissa stepped out first. Then Toby, 14 now, curly hair, hoodie, no smile. He looked at Troy like a stranger who once haunted his dreams. Melissa greeted Father Matthews politely, then turned to Troy. "I'm not promising anything. I just brought him. The rest is up to him." Troy knelt to eye level. "Hi. I'm your dad. Troy." Toby didn't reply. He asked one question. "Why did you leave my mom?" It was a knife straight to the chest. Troy didn't flinch. Because I was weak. I was scared. I was a coward. But not one day has passed that I haven't regretted it. Toby stared. A single tear slipped down, then he turned and walked back to the truck. That evening, Troy told Red Bear everything. The big man just nodded. Solemn. Don't expect him to forgive you after one visit. It took 6 years before my girl stopped screaming when she saw me through the door. Troy sighed. I don't want to force him. I just want to be someone worth standing near if he ever decides to try. Red Bear reached into his pocket, pulled out a leather cord with a wolf tooth pendant. Made this in prison. For my daughter. She wouldn't take it. You keep it. Give it to the kid if he ever lets you close. A gift from one broken father to a kid choosing which way to walk. Troy held it tight, heavy, but warm. A week later, Melissa called again. Toby says he wants to come to the church's community lunch. Not to see you, just to check out the place that gave him bread. Troy swallowed his emotion. I won't go near him unless he wants me to. That Sunday, Toby sat in the farthest corner, quiet, watchful. Troy stayed in the kitchen, washing dishes. He didn't look up, but later, Toby came up, silently placed a folded napkin on the counter. On it, a simple drawing of a loaf of bread and a small red heart. No words, no smile, just that. A seed. The following week, at Hope Haven, a new man arrived, Gino, a ghost from Troy's past. They'd once run in the same circles of booze and broken nights. Gino still held a grudge, claimed Troy had stolen his girl decades ago, during dinner. Gino stood up, pointed at Troy, and yelled, "This guy you're praising a drunk who once sold his kids toys for booze, who slept with a hooker behind the 7-Eleven. He is garbage." The room froze. Red Bear tensed, fists clenched, but Troy stood up, stepped forward. I don't deny my past. Anyone who wants to call me trash, go ahead. But today, I cook the meals, I wash the dishes, because I don't want to die the man I was. Gino laughed, but no one laughed with him. Linda, the shelter director, stepped forward. Gino, if you want to stay here, learn to respect others. If not, there's the door. Gino glared, then walked out. Red Bear clapped Troy on the back. You stood your ground. First time I've seen you do that. That same week, Toby started showing up more often. He still didn't talk much, still kept his distance. But one day, as Troy was chopping vegetables, he dropped a knife on his foot, blood pooled fast. Toby ran over, ripped his shirt sleeve, and tied it around Troy's foot. You're reckless. Troy winced, then chuckled. Yeah, I've been reckless for a long time. Toby looked at him. Softer now. I used to have a friend. He told me people don't stay bad forever. Some just get stuck for too long. That night, back in his room, Troy opened his wooden box again. Inside was a letter from Laura long forgotten. She had written, "If one day you wake up and recognize the man in the mirror again, I hope you'll have the courage to love him." Just once more, he looked in the mirror, saw wrinkles, scars, eyes that had seen too much, and for the first time in decades he smiled. Saturday morning, sun warm and skies clear. Troy took Toby to the old flea market near the bus stop. A memory stirred. They used to come here with Laura. They passed a stall with an old man selling second-hand comics. You like superheroes? The man asked. Toby nodded. Troy pulled out a crumpled dollar. His first tip from cleaning the church. Let's get X-Men 203. You love Wolverine. Right. Toby took the comic. Didn't smile. Just whispered thanks. Moments later, it started to rain. They ducked under an old bookstore awning. Then Toby turned. Suddenly, you still have that wooden box. Troy blinked. You remember it. Toby nodded. It used to be under Mom's bed. I opened it once when I was 8. There were photos, letters, the ring. He looked down. I thought I hated you. But later, I realized you were human too. Rain poured. Troy and Toby sat under the awning, silent. Soaking, Troy whispered. Did your mom ever stop you from looking for me? Toby looked straight at him. She never said bad things about you. She just cried. Every birthday. Troy looked up, raindrops blurred with tears. I was wrong. Toby, I don't expect forgiveness, just the chance to do something right. Toby didn't respond, but he didn't walk away either. He stayed. That night, Toby came to dinner at Hope Haven. Troy cooked black bean stew, Melissa's old recipe. Toby took a bite, paused. This tastes like Mom's. Troy smiled, missing red bell pepper. Right. Toby laughed for the first time. Red Bear elbowed Troy, mine's better. But he'll let you have this one. Later, while Troy was scrubbing dishes, Gino appeared again. But this time, he held a bag of takeout. I figured you'd be short on food tonight, so I brought some extra. Red Bear moved to intercept, but Troy raised a hand. It's okay. He walked up to Gino, lowered his head. Thanks. Gino looked down, then muttered, I was mad at you. But really, I was jealous. You stood tall. I haven't yet. Troy nodded. Well, maybe this is your first step. Gino blinked and walked in. That night, Toby gave Troy a small blue stone. My classmate said it keeps nightmares away. You can have it. Troy held the stone tight. Thanks. Kid, you're the miracle I never dared to pray for. He sat on his bed, the stone beside the wolf-tooth necklace and Laura's photo. He opened his notebook. Wrote for the first time in years. Toby smiled. I still have a chance. Days passed, then weeks. One afternoon, they stood outside a pale yellow house. Melissa's, peeling paint, crooked porch. Toby paused on the step. Wait here. Let me go in first. Troy nodded, clutching the stone in his pocket. Inside. Melissa's voice floated out. Where's your father outside? Tell him thanks for the ride, but he doesn't need to come back. Toby didn't argue. He just said, he's changed. Melissa replied, people don't change that easily. The door shut. As they walked away, Troy asked quietly, is your mom okay? She's tired, but still strong. They walked in silence. Then Toby asked, what did you do to hurt her that badly? Troy took a long breath. I disappeared when she needed me most. Why? 'Cause I was afraid. Afraid to see myself. Afraid I'd hurt her more. So I ran. But running was the deepest wound I left behind. That night, Lucille, the white-haired elder at the shelter, invited Troy for ginger tea. So saw your ex again. Troy nodded. She has every right to hate me. Lucille sipped slowly. My sister and I didn't speak for 12 years, because she didn't invite me to her wedding. Troy blinked. 12 years over an invite. Lucille smiled sadly. It wasn't the wedding. I felt forgotten. But when my husband died, she came. With Mom's, slippers, and a warm pie. I realized I wasn't mad at her. I was mad at the me who felt unloved. She placed a hand over his. Melissa doesn't hate you. She's grieving the you that never showed up. That night, Troy pulled out a letter, unsent, dated 2018. Mel, I have no excuse. But if you ever smell apple pie on the breeze, or hear someone strum Amazing Grace in the night, know this, I'm thinking of you, of Toby, and of everything I broke. He placed it on the table, didn't know Toby had been watching. You wrote that to Mom. Troy nodded. I never sent it. Didn't think I was worthy. Toby said softly. Maybe I can give it to her, when she's ready. Days later, Red Bear hammered nails into the fence. He looked up and said, I once punched my father. Broke his nose. Troy paused. Why, he beat my mom. Swore I'd never forgive. But after Iraq, when I came home, he was waiting hands, shaking from Parkinson's. Didn't say a word. Just hugged me. What did you do? I hugged him back. Not for him. For me. So I could breathe again, Troy whispered. You think Melissa will ever forgive me? Red Bear looked him dead in the eye. Doesn't matter. Have you forgiven yourself? That night. Troy wrote another letter, this one to Toby. I may never walk into your home, but if you ever need someone to sit with you in the rain without judgment, without leaving, he'll be there. Because sometimes, light begins only when we stop running from the dark.